Okay, guys, it's been announced yesterday the Scottish Government has put a freeze on rental increases until March next year and a moratorium on winter evictions. Is the world gone? In terms of where we are. Well, to be honest, Richard actually says we're going to have a good debate, and I went, no. I'm going to tell you the facts, and everybody's going to listen to me, and I'm going to be right, and the Scottish Government's going to be completely wrong in their assumptions. That is the worst thing to do, is put a freeze on rents and a moratorium on winter evictions. It is absolutely crazy. It is destructive and decisive, and been almost vilified landlords as well. And the fact that landlords should pay for the energy increases.
Yeah.
Well, effectively, that's what was said yesterday. Oh,
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to get it back for the energy bills. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get it off of the landlords with the rent. Hello? Have I got to pay it then? After all, Richard, we make loads and loads of money and we are rolling in it. Well, let me just put that rumour right to bed straight away. Let me just put that. Let me share the screen right away. We'll get right into this because I'm sick to death of the Scottish Government saying that. They think that we're the whipping boys for everything. Here is my accounts. And this is the rental value I had in 2005 for one of my properties. Okay? Now, you can easily see there, in 2005, my property was £280 for every 4 weeks. So that's £70 a week I was getting for this property. In 2005, £70 a week in 2005 for this property. Okay, so what I get, what is the local housing allowance for this property right now? So the local housing allowance for the same property right now and today, and this is 2005 up to there, that's 17 years on, is now, and you can zoom in on there, right there, the local housing allowance on a one bed is £86.30. See that down the bottom there?
Yeah.
And that's the bedroom, the one bedroom right there. So I'll just scroll down again and I'll let people see that in bigger writing. See that £86.30? Okay. So would it surprise you for me to say that one bedroom property today is actually getting a lot less than what I'm getting right now? And the very fact is as well, even though we charged £86.70, that is a 23.2% increase in the last 17 years since 2005. Can I just point out inflation's been 42.8% since that time? So when does the Scottish Government get it around their head that we are actually making a lot more money and all our rents are going out of control way above inflation? When in actual fact, their records, that's the local housing allowance. The local housing allowance is £86.70, and I was getting £70, which is the local housing allowance in 2005. That is the government, the UK government's figures. That's based on the rent assessor as well. This is what we're getting, a 23.2% improvement, and inflation's been 42.8% in that time.
Which is a stark difference.
So who's lying? And we know who's lying. It's the Scottish Government. We've become the complete whipping boy for the Scottish Government. Landlords are vilified. We're the people to blame for everything. And the stupidity out of it all is you've got people jumping on and going, that's a great idea. It's like, are you nuts? Let me tell you why this isn't a great... Richard, you tell me why this isn't a great idea.
Well, of course it's not a great idea. I mean, like you say, Jim, landlords and investors and things are always going to end up being the fall guy in this kind of situation. We've seen it with COVID and things. We've seen it now, obviously, with the energy price and the hike. And I mean, the implication of having the rent freeze, like you say, when you use that example of your own property and things, Jim, there's no scope to even bring your rent up to what it should be in terms of in line with even the LHA rate. Never mind these inflated rental prices that people are going on about. But also the eviction ban as well is really, it's going to be so detrimental to a lot of people's portfolio and how they make a livelihood and things as well, because there will be certain instances where they need to get the property back to maybe sell it. They need to, for whatever reason, and they have no means or authority to do that for this set period of time, and it will have a negative effect on a lot of people who have got properties like yourself.
Well, classic example is, let me also dispel another myth.
Yeah.
Landlords very rarely put up the rent when the person's in the property. It's very, very rare. I could count on one hand over the last 30 years, it's probably 3 times actually, I've actually put up the rent with a tenant in situ in the last 30 years, out of all the properties I've got. Now, when you think about the amount of tenancies I've over the last 30 years, that is a minuscule statistic. And the only 3 occasions I've actually put it up is because I did major refurbs, and it actually just reflected a small increment in the rent in order to take into account the refurb. I was spending £12,000 and £15,000 on the refurb, and actually just asking for another £50 a month.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Jim. I've managed and looked after your stuff for over a decade now, and the only time I've ever, and like you say, very few and far between instances, and it's only in circumstances where you've ended up doing, like, obviously improvements and upgrading the property, like it's okay, let's amend that slightly, not even by a great amount. So yeah, and usually we do a change of tenancy, and then in line with the current market.
So here's what happens. Here's what happens when you put a freeze on the rent. You make every single investor unsure about what they should do next, and then you also make every single bank jittery about the fact that there's nowhere for the tenant to go, the landlord to go with that if anything happens. It causes a huge problem. It also means that while the costs begin to rise, it can no longer be passed on to anyone. So therefore, the first thing the landlord's going to do is cut back on non-essential repairs and improvements.
Yeah.
Therefore, the tenant suffers as a result of that for anything they like to get, like new kitchens, new bathrooms, anything like that. If it's not absolutely necessary, it won't get done. If interest rates begin to rise, it won't get done. So we'll just go back to the bare basic essentials. The tenant will suffer as a result of that saying. And as I said before, it's very, very rare. There's no compelling evidence to suggest that when a tenant's in situ, that actually any landlord actually increases their rent. I actually have never heard of it, Richard. I know a lot of landlords that actually I say, well, you should actually increase the rent, and they go, well, to be honest, I've left my rent at that level for all these years, and I'm not particularly bored. I mean, they're a good tenant. I'm making a decent income, so I'm happy with that. So it's very, very rare that actually happens. It's only when new tenants come in.
Yeah, that's generally what we find, and like I say, it's a change of tenancy will alter the rent in line with the current market. Karen, you'll know, obviously the
yeah, so obviously once this news broke, I don't think the rental cap is going to make a major difference to ourselves anyway. Like we say, there's a lot of our landlords, it's been far and few between that have actually implemented rent increases during tenancies. It's not something that is the most common thing for ourselves anyway, but I think the ban on serving notices is going to be the heaviest impact that this is going to carry. We struggled through this with COVID. There are a lot, this basically is a green light for tenants to say, yeah, you can move into the property, not pay your rent, and nothing's going to get done about it. So the impact that this is going to have on landlords, the uncertainty it's going to make for them, they are not going to want to rent out some of their properties. So it's then going to have the negative impact on the market that there's going to be even less houses available.
It's going to further reduce the supply.
Let's analyse that. Let's run back, because there's a lot of detail in here that we can analyse all the way through the implications of this. Let's take the rent freeze first of all, and I talked about the costs going up, but the rent actually not be able to go up at all, so you're squeezed in between. So we've cut back on non-essential repairs. Who suffers as a result of that? Your contractor, your small contractors. No, your small contractors, your small businesses.
Yeah.
We no longer need them to do any refurbishments, any jobs. Therefore, their income drops as a result. Some of them then suffer because they don't have that. So their income's dropped immediately because of that. Other people's income drops because of that. So unemployment potentially gets... So therefore, they can't buy anything else from the people down the street because they've got less income to buy from. So the shopkeeper suffers as a result as well, because there's no money getting spent on that property anymore. They're not doing the refurbs anymore. So everybody in the local community loses out as a result of that squeeze that's happening in between. And that that indecisiveness about what's going on, about where's going to happen. Here's what happens when you talk about what you said, Kieran, about the rent, the moratorium on things. Immediately, what happened this morning, I got a phone call from one of my friends who actually is a tenant, and their landlord served the notice yesterday as soon as they heard that. As soon as they heard that. Now, we're going to talk about this, but the reality is we believe that the moratorium's in place now.
Yeah, but what I could read it is.
So that notice is invalid. But my point is, it made everybody rush to a decision and say, look, I was going to sell in the next 3 or 4 months, but now I've got to do it. I can't wait till March. I'll have to put something on now. So they've all tried to do it. And whether that happens or not is another story, but it forced everybody to do that. It's also forced me in a position, and I'll quite openly say that, is now I've actually said, well, just keep going on with their eviction. Because I can no longer need... I mean, I've served the notice already, and all we need to do is now apply to the First Tree Tribunal. Now, I would have just waited on that normally before to see what happens, to see if I can get the tenant back on track, which is kind of where we're going with it, because no one wants to evict a tenant. No one wants to evict people. We just want them to pay their rent, don't be antisocial, look after the property, and everybody's happy. That's it. And pay a rent at a level that's fair. The rent that we charge and is charged to build anybody else is within the tolerances of what I showed you before, which is the local housing allowances, which is there. This is set by the Scottish Government, the rent assessors. This is all the local housing allowances for the area. So the average rent, let me go through that. Let me home in on Fife right here, and I'll tell you what the average rent is according to the rent assessor. Here's Fife. There's a shared room rate of 70.19. Get your pens and paper out, folk, because if you're not charging these rents, you can put them up to these levels, because this is approved by the government. And most of you will find right now that you're actually not charging these rents. You're charging a lot less, which this is now a revelation, because I'm now bringing it to the forefront because of this. If they hadn't kicked the cave, so to speak, they wouldn't have woken the bear. So times 52 and divided by 12. So, oh wow, you're joking, really? So the one bed shared rate, so a bed sit rate is now £304.
Yeah,
I was getting that when I first started for a 1-bedroom flat.
Yeah,
that's crazy, eh? So 86.3 times 52 divided by 12 is 374 for a 1-bed, according to the government. This is the government's figures, by the way. Times 52 divided by 12, £473 for a 2-bed, according to the government. 12333 times 52 divided by 12, 573 for a 3-bed, and 195.62 times 52 divided by 12 is £847 for a 4-bed. So if you've got a 4-bed property and it's you've got less than £847, you're actually undercharging, according to the government, because this is the government's figures. Remember, this is taken right off their local housing allowance website, right across. Now that's just for Fife. You've also got, look, Eastern Berkshires a lot more, and you've got another one here, possibly a lot more. Dundee and Angus is a lot more. You've got Aberdeenshire a lot more. So all these different ones. So the government's doing it to themselves. They're just highlighting an issue which is always there. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we're being blamed for this. Let's cover this again. So what's happening here, people can't evict anymore. And it's like what you said, Aaron, that they're now okay. It's now okay not to pay your rent, because you're not going to get evicted until next March. Now, I'll be honest. Most tenants, and the majority of tenants actually, it was very, very few people.
We were quite lucky.
Not paying their rent in the pandemic. It's the same scenario. So I don't expect that to happen again, and that's fine with me. But it's the very fact that the ones who aren't paying the rent right now have now been stopped by the government from the landlord taking any action, even though they were about to take action because they were maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months in arrears. So they've now got to wait another 7 months before they can do anything. Now, most landlords have 2 or 3 properties. How long do you think they're going to last with rising interest rates and rising costs for repairs?
Not very long.
There's a knock-on effect to the housing market. We are 1,200 properties down for rent in Fife already in the last 5 years. There's 1,200 properties less for rent than there is now. So your misconception about landlords have all the properties in Fife and it's a growing market are completely wrong for people out there that are thinking like that. it's 1,200 less. Somebody actually said to me this morning, he says, but well, it'll sort out all the rogue landlords. I says, there is no rogue landlords.
Very small percentage.
It's a well, it's not even a percentage. It's
point something, yeah.
It's point something. It's not even a percentage. There is no rogue landlords. There's ill-informed landlords. There's landlords that don't know what their requirements are or what their duties are, which is all about education and educating them. And that's why we do a lot of shows.
Just going to say that. Yeah, that's why we do what we do and allow people to learn. I mean, there's landlords I meet and, like you say, that they're just not educated enough and maybe they've not got certain things in place, and then we educate them to the fact, and they're more than happy to do that. Right. They're not rogue landlords.
So where do we get this idea as well that it's rent or energy? Because it seems to be like that in the paper, doesn't it? And in the media. Yeah. Oh, you're either going to have to pay you're going to heat your home, or you're going to have to pay your rent. It's like, where did that come from?
You know what I find funny though is they say this, so this is all coming into effect on rent. But what about people with their mortgages? Do we know? Yeah. People not? Is this going to be unaffected to people that have mortgages to pay? And landlords as well. Well, that's all fine and well saying that you can't evict a tenant, but what happens if that rent is paying the mortgage for the property? Mortgage then can't get paid. Property then gets repossessed.
And the last thing, so I actually heard on the grapevine that the councils are actually up in arms about it because it puts them in a really vulnerable situation because they've not got enough housing. Wait till I get onto this. Wait till you find out the housing statistics. Let's look at the government, the Scottish government's record over the last 11 years they've been in power as a majority on housing statistics. And this will be a revelation. This is where the blame lies. It's not on the private landlords. It's not on the utility companies. It's their failure to deal with a cascading problem every single year, which was snowballing over all the years, and they failed to deal with it. This is their problem. It's right at their doorstep. Let's get back to this thing about the media. Is it your rent or is it your energy? Is it your rent or is it your energy? Why does it have to be one or the other? And why does energy have to be compared with rent? You're not going to be able to pay your energy if you don't have a roof over your head.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing Fife Council used to tell everyone. Your rent is the most important thing to pay. Then everything else falls into place. So why does it need to be your rent or your energy? What about Sky TV subscriptions? What about Netflix subscriptions? Oh, sorry, that's the media, isn't it? See my point? Why they're not telling you to cut back on that? Because that's the people telling you to cut back on. It's like they're not telling you to cut back on their own subscriptions, are they?
I mean, to me, that's their luxury.
Their luxury. What about your Netflix? What about your phone? What about your cigarettes? What about your holidays? What about your celebrations? What about your vapes? What about your alcohol? Are you not going to cut back on that then? Well, it's like these are all the things. Now, people's disposable income, we did a show the other week on this, and 15% of the average person's disposable income goes on luxuries.
Yeah.
Okay? Utilities is 4.81% of that amount. So if utilities are going to double by 5%, say for the easiness, if they doubled by another 5%, that's the 5% to bring 15% to 10% off your luxuries. So you've got your money there already. And we showed it in a previous show as well, Richard, where you could save up to £1,200 a month. So there is no reason why you should be putting a freeze on rents, and there is no reason why you should be putting a ban on evictions, because the money
should review and people should review their own personal situation and cut back on things to then obviously allow them to live
but at the same time, the Scottish government are in a power that rather than enforcing all these like, oh, cut back on this, you're not going to get evicted, they're not doing anything in my eyes to stop it at the source of the problem. They're implementing like all these packages and doing this and that. Well, why do you not just fix it at the source rather than implementing all these things that are having a knock-on effect to people's day-to-day lives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I mean, like what we done the other week, Jim, on the cost of living crisis is educate people or help people educate themselves on how to live. I'm not going to say frugally, but live a wee bit more smarter. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Richard, if you're spending 15% on your luxuries, you've got a big amount to actually save and put towards your other bills.
Definitely.
That's 15% of the average wage. Now, the average wage is £630 a week, apparently, according to this. So the average person is £630 a week. Let me just run these numbers. 630 times 0.15. That's almost £100. £100 is £1,200 a year. So £1,200 a year extra just from that, and that is only that amount. So no, sorry, that's not £1,200 a year. That's £5,200 a year.
Yeah.
Because it's every week. So you've got an extra £5,000 over and above that just to our luxuries. £5,000. So your utilities is doubling. So there's your money there, and then there's something else, food going up. There's your money there. But they're now saying
fuel costs and things.
Well, they're now saying that inflation. I saw it the other now. Inflation is only going to go up to about 10.8% now because there's been a cap on the utilities. The government's put it on, so they're actually saying that now. The Bank of England that says, well, in that case, if they're putting a cap on it, we're only expecting inflation to go up to 10.8%,
which is a lot less than everybody else has been predicting.
So where is this catastrophe happening? Right. Let's look at the record of the Scottish Government. Let's dig into this numbers. Let's see who is really accountable here. Who has caused this problem? Okay, there is the graph there for the number of houses built over the last, since 2007? So that's 15 years. The Scottish Government started about here, 2011. Now, they were in power since 2007, by the way, but they were a minority government up to 2011 where they had the majority. Look at the amount of houses that they've actually managed to help people build. Now, considering the target is meant to be 25,000 every single year. Right there. That line that goes right. Yeah, yeah. You can't, everybody can see that line, yeah?
Yeah, because the
line is below it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So every single year since they came to power, they were supposed to build 25,000 houses in 2011. They did 16. They were supposed to build 25,000 houses in 2012. They built 15,000. 2013, they built 15,000. 2014, they built 16,000. 2015, they built 18,000. 2016, they built 18,000. 18,000 in 2017. 2018, they built 20. Oh, give them a credit. 2019, they did 22. Still not 25, though.
Still not 25, no.
2020, they did 16,000. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, by the way. I'm rounding up to the nearest thousand. And 2021, they built 19,000. Now, if their target, let me just recap in here. If their target is to build 25,000 houses a year since they came to power, they should have built 275,000 houses or helped everybody build 275,000 houses. But they've only built 193,000 properties. So they're down 82,000 properties, which represents 42% reduction. So 42% they missed their target by. And then they're talking, let's get into but we're going to build another 10,000 houses every single year to take up for that. Excuse me, but you've not even met your current criteria as it is. So what would 10,000 houses another year do? And if you've not got the skills and resources to do it, how are you going to do it? Now, let me get this right. I'm going to put me on big screen, by the way, guys. The Scottish Government has failed to keep up with their building programme for houses, and it's come back to haunt them, big style. And they're blaming private landlords and investors for their failing. Let me make that clear. The numbers are right there for everybody to see. And I can't be clearer than that. You can see that in a nutshell. So what are they doing? And here's the next one. I was speaking to the councillors at the weekend. I'm not going to name names and I'm going to tell you who they are. And we were talking about certain areas. Let's talk about Buckhaven. Let's talk about Buckhaven, okay? So Buckhaven's got a big field at the back and it is zoned for housing.
Mm-hmm.
You could get lots of affordable housing up there. But according to the powers that be, they won't build there because it's not cost effective to build there. Because it costs too much to build a house and the value of the house once it's finished would be less than what they built it for. So they're saying they can't afford to build a house. Now, can I just put big screen again?
Yeah. You
can't afford not to build a house. If you look at these numbers, it's a stark reality of the fact that you're failing in government to build enough social housing and affordable housing for the people of Scotland over the last 11 years. That's the point. And that's the fact. The government, if anybody's on here, please feel free to share this because I need to get this message out quite clear. It's the failure of the Scottish Government to build enough affordable and social housing over the last 11 years they've been in a majority government to actually avert this crisis in the first place. We all said it was coming. There was 69% of council houses were sold off since the 1980s. If that's no a telltale sign, and but we weren't allowed the money by the UK government. Excuse me, but you had tax raising powers.
Yeah.
And I'll guarantee you, I could go into the government right now and I could find that money straight away. And all the other different budgets are actually squandering money on things that actually don't need and not essential.
Yeah, and it should really be put into housing. I mean, it desperately needs to be put into housing.
Absolutely. Housing is the key thing in our society. It is stability for everybody. And if you castigate private landlords at this point in time, is what they're doing, and vilify them right now, you'll have more and more people exit this market, and you'll not have 1,200 properties over the last 5 years, less than Fife for rental. You'll have a lot less than that. And here's my answer to this. When people are on there saying that these greedy landlords, these horrible landlords, these, all these different things about landlords, I tell you what, we'll all sell up then. Where are you going to stay?
Then there's where
are you going to stay? All these greedy landlords will disappear. Where are you going to stay? Because you're not staying in any of the houses that you had before. If you're a tenant right now and all these landlords sold up, you would have nowhere to go because the council or the government has nowhere to house you. That's why they need us, and that's why they've always used us. And yet they're using us as the pariah and the person that is actually the problem here. We are not the problem. The problem is the failure of the Scottish government to do a successful, sustainable housing policy and get it in action regardless of the cost. The cost to society is greater than the cost to your pocket. It's essential. It would need to do that. And I've said it every single time in every single successive show. And it's their failure, the Scottish government, it's caused this problem right now. It's nothing to do with energy bills. It's nothing to do with the war in Ukraine. It's been going over the last 15 years, but more importantly, 11 years since they've been in a majority government to do something about it, and they've failed to do nothing about it. And now they're pointing the finger at us.
It's amazing when you put the facts together and put them in front of people like that, how the government could then just turn and use, like you say, landlords, investors as the fall guy. In a situation like this, it's just
it's lies, damn lies, and statistics. You're talking to a statistician and an accountant. I know exactly how to do that with figures.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that we were taught in our training to do. There's a housing study here. I'll show you. I dug it out. This is the housing statistics quarterly, right? This is over the last 10, 11 years. But interestingly enough, they take it back to 2010 to do their statistics, because if they take it back to pre-credit crunch to do these statistics, just like I've shown there, that the rental is actually a lot less going up than they want it to be.
Right.
Because the number in 2006 for renting a property was a lot greater than it was in 2010. Remember when we used to rent a two-bedroom local authority flat for £450 in 2006?
Yep.
And yet it's only the last 3 years it's recovered to that price.
Mm-hmm.
The same flat.
Yeah. When I first started, we were doing 450, and then it dipped, and then we're only just come back to. Do you know when we're back up to those levels in the recent years? Yeah.
They're telling us it's like, you must. I'm supposed to be. Oh, you must be mistaken, Your Honour. And it's like, no, you're a bloody liar. The Scottish government's lying. I'm just calling them out right now. Get it on their social media page. The Scottish government is clearly lying. They're manipulating statistics, and they're doing that deliberately to circumvent, to strengthen their story. That's all they want to do. They want to strengthen their story. Hence the reason why I thought, right, I'm going to look at the statistics. We're going to bring it out, and we're going to get them, and we're going to hold them to task, and we're going to show people the exact numbers where it is right now. It is exactly.
Just got to say, we've got some good comments coming through.
Scapegoating and deflection of blame is the government's 101 programme. Exactly. It's exactly the case every single time. It is the failure of the government to do a successful, sustainable housing policy, affordable and social, over the last 11 years they've been a majority government. How could you be in a majority government and not actually think that you should have looked after this? and just neglected it and just ignored it. And with these successive charts, this chart that I showed you earlier on here, to say that I've got right here, to say that, you know, I mean, how could you look at that in a meeting in the government and actually sit on a board in a housing partnership, or a, you know, the housing minister could sit there and because they'll have looked at this at some point in time, because that's what these are produced for, and they're sitting there and going, yeah, we've done really well, we're 42% down.
I mean, they're grossly under target, and then they're proposing to do another 10,000.
10,000 a year. But if you can't do 25,000 a year, how are you going to do 10,000 a year extra?
Yeah.
It's a classic example of what people say to me. It's like, my sales are going to increase by, I'm going to do 100% more. I'm going to do double the sales next year. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to do double the sales. So how are you going to do that? Where are you going to get the numbers for that? Who's going to actually do that? Because you're not going to do it yourself. So are you going to put up the price? Are you going to get another person to help you? When are they going to come in? What skills are they going to have? How much is it going to cost them? And all. And it's like, once you work that out, it's like, you've got no chance of increasing your turnover by 100% next year. From a standing start of where you are right now. And that's where the government is. They keep saying all these words, and they keep saying about, oh, we're going to do 10,000 here, we're going to do 15,000 there, and we're going to have houses for this and houses for that. And it's like, you've not even done it yet. Fact, you've not even done it yet. It's right here. Hello, McFly. But I should just go up to Nicola Sturgeon and go, hello, McFly.
Yeah, but like that kind of conversation, I mean, Jim, we have conversations like that, obviously trying to work out, obviously, when we're looking at the stats of things. And you always say to me, remember now, don't kid yourself, make sure you're looking at it properly. And that's obviously what they're doing.
People will look at the statistics to support their story. And this is why this quarterly thing over the last 10 years, since 2010, was produced. Because it was only to 2010, as I said. Because if they went to 2006, the rents had actually increased a lot less than what they wanted. Therefore, they wouldn't be able to push through things like rent controls. This supports their mechanism. This is why they produced it. Every time you see an article like this, you've got to ask yourself, why is this being produced, and who's producing it, and for what reason? And this is to substantiate their stories every single time. And only their stories. This is why we need to start producing stuff for ourselves. And this is why I produce all information as well for Fife, just so they kind of get one over on us, because I know damn fine it's know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, that means lying, by the way. So what are we going to do about this? We've concluded here, right? But we'll go into this about tenants' energy bill spiraling and how it affects landlords in a minute. And just in a minute, because it's going to be quick. What we've concluded here, we've concluded that it's really the Scottish Government's failure to sustain a proper housing policy and affordable and social housing that has actually caused this problem in the first place. And they're just pointing the finger at us to blame us for it.
Yeah, and I think and these, what they're implicating now is only just going to further reduce the supply of housing and just make the situation worse. And that's not just my opinion. I mean, that's without a doubt
There's
going to happen.
effect from it from COVID. So this is effectively COVID round 2, we'll say. And it's going to be the same effects that it's going to have, the negative effects, the amount of landlords that are like, I'm done with the hassle of this, because the Scottish Government continues to, like you say, vilify them and pass the blame on. Oh no, it's the landlord's fault, so we'll put this in to make us look better, make the landlords look worse, when in actual fact all they're doing is reducing the housing market by landlords exiting it.
What's going to make it even worse, Karen, what's going to make it even worse is the fact that a lot of investors will actually not buy anymore. Therefore, the sales market won't be sustainable at the bottom end of the market, because they'll only rely on first-time buyers now and downsizers. And therefore, that cycle of investors might not actually be there to keep that housing market supported and housing market going, which again has another knock-on effect to what's going on. John Blackwood put it nicely when he actually said attacking landlords for political reasons, suggesting that proposals will only further reduce housing supply and putting more people at risk. And I would completely agree with him. All she's doing, and all the Scottish. Well, let's not just say it's Nicola Sturgeon. Let's remember we've got Mr. Penny Farthing boy, Patrick Harvey, in the background there, getting his tuppence worth in. Somebody at the throwback 60s, saying that what he should know and what should be done. But I'll be honest, I don't think he's got a commercial awareness about him at all. He has no idea what he's talking about. And we've witnessed that, Richard, because we've sat in a meeting with him, and it's like, you have no idea what's going on here. Boots on the ground. Until you get boots on the ground and you're right down there with a tenant and you understand their needs and their wants and what they have got and what they have not got, you will never be able to put in a proper policy which will accommodate for them. Doing political things like, yeah, let's have a rent freeze, and like, oh, we'll vote for that. And it's like, just so happens, possibly the people that will vote for your rent freeze probably just won't go out and vote at all because they can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Because that's the market you're probably appealing to, which actually says, oh, that's a great idea. And all the people that will vote for you, you've now alienated.
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, making decisions for people, like making decisions for the masses and things, but without having that realisation, or like you say, that boots on the ground experience of what actually happens in these smaller towns and individuals who are the vulnerable ones and who it's going to really affect. And they make these decisions and don't really think of that bigger picture.
Andrea actually said, do you think any other party, if they could make the Scottish government, would be able to do things differently better? No. Do you know why I say no? Because it's not the party that's controlling the government. The Scottish government is the civil servants. And the civil servants aren't commercially aware enough in order to understand what they need to do that. So the civil servants make up all the policy, write all the speeches and everything like that, and then they just wheel the politicians out and they go, yeah, that looks all right, and all the rest. Okay,
this is what
I'll just say that. And so they actually have full belief in what they're saying in the background. So if they get it wrong, all they're doing is the mouthpiece for the person that gets it wrong. So the answer to that is no, decisively no, that there needs to be a shake-up in the government in order to make sure that the right people are in there to identify. I'm not talking about politicians here. I'm talking about people actually employed in these jobs, proper, I wouldn't even say consultants because I don't like that word.
In the background.
Yeah, people that know what they're talking about. I mean, I could easily go into the Scottish government and find hundreds of millions of pounds probably somewhere. And it's funny because it's a statement if folk go, how on earth could you do that? It's like, how did they manage to find money for the coronavirus? And how did they manage to find money for a war? And how did they manage to find money for a cost of living crisis all of a sudden? But we can't build a house, which is more than need. So we'll spend 92 billion throwing it down the drain on giving it to energy companies, but we'll not spend 92 billion on building houses for our sustainable, affordable future.
That's crazy.
There we go. When you think about that, 92 billion, it's like you could spend that 92 billion on the houses. It would house these people and put proper sustainable energy policies in as well. But we're going to just give away 92 billion to cap and subsidise companies that are making an absolute fortune. We're picking on the wrong person. We're picking on the wrong people here. Yeah. But sorry, the people that are actually making the money are in a different country. That's why. And the people that are actually making the money are the people that actually created the war. That's why. But who's having to pay for it? Us.
Yeah.
And I mean you. Not you, Richard or Karen. Well, you
no.
as well. But I'm talking about everybody watching and listening to this right now. We are having to pay for the failure of the government to actually have a sustainable housing policy and to make sure people are looked after and make sure things are under control. They should have seen it coming. It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? We all saw it coming before they saw it coming.
Yeah, definitely.
The amplification of the strangling of the market is socially destructive path. It allows the systems to groom the public into accepting removal of statutory obligations. Hit it on the nail, Dave. Hit it on the nail. The nail on the head. Absolutely. It's almost like we're saying it's okay, we'll just bail everybody out every single time. We have to take some accountability. We cannot just be a nation of lemmings walking into the abyss. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure we do this for ourselves, look after ourselves, and make sure we can budget for ourselves as well. That is the key, most important thing. Martin Lewis, money-saving expert. You should be plugging into these people. You know, how do I combat the cost of living crisis? How do I get around this? How do I get around that? How do I get around? You know, that's the whole thing. I've got to say, and people will say, who are you to say? You've no struggled. Okay. I was homeless and unemployed in my early 20s, and that's where I started from. I know exactly what it's like because I struggled to get a rental property for a long time because nobody would want to take us because we were so young at that time, and it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a mainstream thing. So we were so young, and we actually got knocked back for being young, and we got knocked back for other things as well. And it's like, for God's sake, it's like, well, there's no as if we'll no look after the place.
Yeah.
But just because of that. So I know exactly what it's like, and I know exactly what it's like with the system because I was unemployed. So I tried to apply for housing benefit at that time as well. And they went, well, we're not going to give you as much as we'd give you if you were on benefits because you're a student. So because I'm a student learning and trying to help myself, okay, I would have been better off actually being unemployed because I was available for work. But if I'm a student, I wasn't getting as much.
And that's what the system is flawed because you're not the only one in that situation, Jim. There's so many people that they are better off. They have more of an income from being on benefits than they would do if they were working a minimum wage job.
The systems.
Anyway,
let's quickly talk about this Fife Tenants spiral into energy bills about to become landlord. It is about to become the landlord's problem. It has just become a problem, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like they've landed it right on their feet. I mean, gas and electricity bills rocket for Fife tenants. Fife landlords who do not start to make energy efficient upgrades face lengthy void periods. There's another thing as well. Where are we going to get the money for the energy efficient upgrades now?
I know. Well, they've spoke about, obviously, there's going to be funding and grants and things there, but I mean, there's no actual confirmation on that. No. There's no actual confirmation on that. And then there'll be qualifying. There'll be obviously qualifying criteria for that as well.
I mean, until 6 months ago, out of the thousands of tenants that we've actually shown around Fife properties and the years as an agent, I can count on the number of tenants we have actually requested to see the EPC. There's another thing as well. It's like nobody cares about the EPC, but all of a sudden, the better EPC rating, the lower the gas and electricity bill. So this is actually essential that Fife tenants actually look out for that. That's one of the key indicators. I asked a lot of Fife tenants to actually watch this and say, if you are a Fife tenant or you know a Fife tenant, share it with them because the better the EPC rating, the lower the gas bill. So get your EPC out, have a look at it, and see if there's any improvements you can make because it actually gives improvements at the back end. The landlord might actually be able to help, or you might actually get grants towards it as well. If you're over 60, for example, you get a free heating system.
Yeah.
If your heating system's inefficient. If you're on benefits, you can actually get insulation, you can get other things, but it's all on the Energy Saving Trust Scotland's website, what you're entitled to or what you will get for that.
It's true. It's true what you say about the EPCs, though. I mean, I remember, back when EPCs first were starting to come around and obviously and becoming a part of obviously legislation and things, I used to show EPCs to potential tenants and things, and they would have a clue what it was, and I'd have to explain. Yeah. Now they ask, Karen, you know that, they'll ask you what's the EPC rating.
Even doing viewings, the amount of them that ask what is the EPC rating, and it is listed, it is part of our listings that we do. It states the council tax band, it states the EPC on the listing for it, so people can see it before they're even coming out and see what EPC rating it is. But the amount of people that come out and ask it at the viewing, because it is something that matters more now. People are more conscious about their gas, electric, the running costs of the property, and they don't want a property that's going to be costing them a fortune each month.
Well, here's a classic.
This all happened.
Before this cap thing was announced, actually I'd calculated it was 17,951 Fife tenants. Their bill will rise from £75.1 a month to £195.2 a month. That's a huge amount. Their hot water bill will rise from £34.47 a month, and lighting so your hot water will rise by £34.47 per month, and their lighting by £21.44 per month. Now, when you think about it, if you can put your lighting to LED lighting, then it obviously cuts back drastically on that. So you will make a big saving. I did it with my downlighters. I had 40, 50 watt downlighters, changed them all to 4 watt LEDs, and that's equivalent to having 2 60 watt bulbs on permanently in a house. And that's going from just one room, having 100 with just 2 of them. And that's 260 watts with 44 watts. That's mental, eh? So that's the sort of thing. Each Fife tenant will have to find an extra £175.91 per month for the gas and electricity bills. To give you an idea of the extent of the money being spent by Fife tenants on heating alone, ignoring hot water and lighting, last year £16,157,195.87 it was, and by 2023 it'll be £42,008,709.26 a year. Yeah,
That's about tripled.
Yeah, I know. These stats don't actually tell the whole story, though. It's a legal requirement for every rented property to have an EPC, which rates the property on its energy performance. Like those, like the washing machine, fridge, freezers, albeit for the property. A rating's the best, G rating's the worst. And while the law states the property cannot be rented with an EPC lower than E in England and Wales, and the expectations and there are expectations to this, meaning Fife rental properties are still being legally let with F and G. In Scotland, the legislation, the minimum rating is E just now, but the requirement in Scotland will be scheduled for a lot higher. I think it's going up to C by 2025.
Going up to C by C rating by 2025.
Yeah. Well, whether that's going to happen or no is another story now.
Well, they've talked about pushing that to 2026, although this is for new tenancies. Existing tenancies will remain at 2028. They need to be brought up to LPA.
Yeah, by the way, I've put the Energy Saving Trust Scotland
program
in there. For anybody that's watching or listening in, just click on the link on your on this broadcast right now below in the comments, and you can get on the Energy Saving Trust Scotland. It'll tell you if you're eligible for any grants or any assistance towards saving energy, saving your utility costs. So let me tell you about the average energy bills, the EPC rating between Fife and the rental property. So the average Fife rental property in a D rating will cost £38.50 more than a C rating. That's a month. So if you multiply that up over the year, £38.50.
And your average property at the moment is a D rating.
That's another £462 just because of the rating. So £462 is the difference. The average Fife rental property with an E rating will cost £67.66 more than a D rated, and the Fife rental property with an F will cost £97 more a month than an E rated property. So if you have an F, here we go, 0.16. This is going to be crazy. 67.66. You know what I'm doing, eh?
Yeah.
8.5 equals that.
And there's some rural properties and things that I know that are F.
Yeah, that means if you're in an F and you're moving up to a C, okay, an F to a C, you'll save yourself £2,500 a year.
And that's a big saving.
Yeah, just for moving a C-rated property. Both Westminster and Holyrood governments now propose introducing a minimum EPC band of C for all tenancies in 2025, 2028 for existing tenancies. I think you said that, Richard.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Irrespective of this new legislation, those Fife landlords with low EPC ratings now need to seriously consider making those energy-efficient upgrades to ensure the Fife rental properties come to continue to appeal to tenants. Guess what? We've got no money because you've frozen the rents.
It's true, though. It's true.
That's what we're meant to do. We can't go anywhere with that. You know, base rates rise, and you're frozen with the rent. You're squeezed in the middle, and it's like, guess what's suffering? You're just going to have to live with an EPC rate in the E.
Yeah, that along with all the other repairs, like you say, that are non-essential. That's the things that are going to obviously take the back seat.
Even worse, Richard, because there's a moratorium on evictions, you can't even sell the property.
Yeah.
If you want rid of it, so even if you want to get rid of it, you can't put the tenant out now to sell the property. So it's not possible to do that. And what landlord's going to take it on, even if it's got the existing tenant sitting in it, with the prospect of you've got a moratorium on that, and plus the fact is the tenant, are they paying the rent or no?
Yeah. And then if you take that property on, you're going to then have to do the upgrades that the current landlord couldn't.
Yeah, I'll come back to saying though, remember, let me make this clear. The vast majority, 99.9% of tenants pay their rent all the time. They look after the property and they're not antisocial. It's exactly the same for landlords. The vast majority of landlords look after their tenants, charge a reasonable rent, they know the legislation, they're compliant completely, and they just don't know what they don't know sometimes. And it's our job to educate people.
Yeah.
I can see why Fife's rental property market energy efficient ratings filter into new rental prices over the winter months. We'll talk about that in a minute. What were you going to say, Richard?
No, I was just going to say, do you know what? The stories of bad tenants and rogue landlords. That is so, it's so commercialised. So that's what's relevant, and that's what's
put my work on my mouth.
No, that's what I mean about the stories of rogue landlords and bad tenants and things are so prominent, and because they're commercialised so much, and that's what people have in their mind about what the day-to-day is with rentals, and that's not. It's a very, very small minority and a very small percentage of tenants and landlords that actually fall in that.
I'm blame Paul Campolina for everything.
Paul, if you're watching.
I don't really. I mean, Paul's a good friend.
I know.
But Paul's on Landlords from Hell and Tenants Nightmares or whatever it is on Channel 5, and they're getting repeated everywhere around the world as well. I think somebody was showing something in Norway or something to him, and he was showing it on his social media saying, God, somebody's even watching this in Norway. But it's that's what sells. People just want to see doom and gloom. Yeah. They want to see fights in the street. They want to see aggravation, and that's what's selling. But unfortunately, that's what's going up here. And that's what the impression is, that every landlord's like that. And every landlord thinks every tenant's like that. And it's no, that is not the case at all. Fife rental properties with low EPC ratings will probably rent for between 4 to 10% less than higher energy efficient properties. But we can't change that now because we're stuck. Richard, can I ask you a quick question about this?
Yeah.
Does that mean if I've got an empty property and I go to rent it again, I could set the rent at a new level now?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There you go.
Yeah, of course you can.
So that's fine.
And I think, and just to touch on that as well, and we spoke about it in another show, but properties with obviously a lower EPC, now investors and things are tending to stay away from them, but you'll probably pick them up at a better price point, and then to do the small changes to bring it up to maybe a C, and then be able to let it. It's probably worth your while looking at that. So don't be put off if something's a lower EPC rating, because you could pick up a good deal, and then set a rent level that is in line with the current market.
Yeah. This means that Fife Landlords will have to accept between £28.88 and £72.20 per month less for an average Fife property with a low EPC rating compared to a higher energy efficient one. And that's quite a lot, but then that makes the cost benefit for doing that. For example, if it's to do with your heating system and it's maybe the 72.2 times that, you're talking about £866. So if you multiply that by 2, there's a 2-year payback for putting a new heating system in.
Yeah.
If that moved you up to a better rating. But as I said, you can't do anything about that now. If you put in the heating system now, you can't then put the rent up to reflect that, or even put it up a marginal amount. I'm not even really sure if the tenant agrees to it, if you can do that.
But I mean, it's not even just. I mean, the go-tos straight away are the heating system, new windows, new doors, and things. But there's a lot of things you could do that could bring your EPC rating up. And as Jim, you've shared the link there for the Energy Saving Trust. Go on that and have a look, and they've got a lot of good advice and tips and things on how to do that.
Yeah. So any Fife property with a lower EPC rating might take a longer for a tenant to find a tenant, especially during the winter. I don't think that's going to be the case, Richard, because there's a shortage of supply now. It's
because there's such a demand, yeah.
Well, there's such a demand. It's because there's landlords exiting the market. They've not got enough. The local authorities screaming out. They've actually just released the fact that they're going to buy more properties, and they're not really bored what they pay for them now. It's like because they realise that they can't get them for the price that they want because of the market and the way it is now. And it will continue to be like that. Guess what? It's a shortage of supply. Sorry. Who does that go back to again? Oh, it's the Scottish government. It's like you've not built enough houses, you idiot.
Even the amount of tenants that phone up and they're asking for viewings for a property, and I'll always ask them, have you been looking for long? Like, how long have you been looking for when I'm doing the viewings with them? And they'll say, I've been on the register with Fife Council for years and I've got no progress. I've not got enough points to get something right now. I'm no further forward. So I'm looking for a private let because that market is so stretched out. Fife Council don't have enough houses for everybody. So the amount of people that would ideally like to be with Fife Council in one of their private lets are having to come to private landlords because Fife Council don't have the housing for them as it is.
Yeah.
Council waiting lists, right. Homeless waiting lists are just ridiculous at the moment.
Yeah, and it will continue to be like that. They're not going to solve that problem. The only way they're going to do that is to, guess what? Build more houses. This is it here. But they've not built enough houses. They're 42% down on their target. They're never going to catch up with it. And as people live longer, that adds another 25. So if the average age in Scotland goes up 1 year, that means you've got to find another 25,000 houses.
Which is never going to happen.
No. And no, Richard, you can make it happen if you really want
it. It could be, but it's not going to happen.
You've got to have a government that's committed to doing that come hell or high water. And that's the reality. And to take decisions about, I know it's going to cost more to build the property than it's actually worth, but we need to do it for the good of the people in the medium to long term, because it is essential for our society. They go on about this progressive nation. They go on about this, how we're all together and how we have more social inclusion. That's bullshit. That is utter bullshit, Nicola Sturgeon. You're talking out your bloody arse. And I really mean it, because it means nothing. It is just words. And everybody's on social media going, oh, she's fantastic. Oh, she's great. It's like, she's not even doing anything. She's just saying it. There's nothing getting built.
Yeah.
You can see the numbers are right in front of you there. It's never been built properly for the last 11 years. 15 years if you include their minority government. They've not done it. They've failed to do it. Failed massively. I'll leave the last word to you, Richard.
I was just going to say, you know, it's a shame that obviously these things have been introduced. That obviously the rent freeze, the possessions obviously banned for the period of time that they're proposing up to at least March and things. But it's just the effect that they're going to have without. I mean, this decision's been made without, like you say, people who are on the ground and in the smaller towns and seeing how things actually pan out and how things play out on a day-to-day basis. These decisions are made without taking these kind of things into consideration, and it's going to have such a detrimental effect. Yeah, and it's going to have a detrimental effect for tenants, landlords, everybody involved, because it's not been thought through properly.
Yeah, Karen, what's your thoughts on this finally?
I don't think it's been a very well-educated decision that they've made here. Like you say, it's going to have a negative effect on tenants and landlords, the housing market in general. So, but to all landlords that are worrying about this is what we're here for. We are making sure that we are keeping ourselves up to date on what's going on and what is happening with the small, finer details that are going on with this. So if you do need advice, all three of us are happy to help you.
Yeah. My final words on this, and I'm going to be quite straightforward with this, and I've said it before already, and the fact that the majority of tenants always pay their rent on time anyway. They look after their property. And I mean, even majority is not enough to say almost, as I said, 99.9%. That's more than majority of tenants actually pay on time, they look after their property, and they're not antisocial. And the majority of landlords, as I said before, look after their tenants, look after the property, and they do as best as they can with the circumstances they've got. And they don't need somebody to tie their one hand behind their back or chop their leg off while they're doing it. And that's effectively what's just happened right now. But we'll ride it out, we'll roll through it again, and we'll see what comes out of the other end. And I'm sure in the future, in the next couple of weeks, I'll probably send Jenny Gilruth another email and just basically castigating the government for their failure to act on anything or do anything substantial to support the people of Scotland. You would think I didn't vote for them, eh? Okay, guys, thanks very much for coming on the show, and we'll see you Saturday morning. We're doing the Saturday morning show about sales, about the sales market, and how to get the best deals, and in terms of the housing sales and stuff like that, and how to get the best prices as well. So tune in Saturday morning. It'll be myself, more than likely it'll be Andrea, and we'll see you then. Richard, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say we'll more than likely touch on this again. Monday we're doing Wealth Creation show as well, Jim. So 12:30 Monday.
Perfect. I thought you were going to say shut up and just finish off. And on that note, bye-bye.
Right, cheers. Bye.